Let's talk about the incoherence and stupidity of atheists. These arguments, points that I'll make here, they'll work all the way up to the new atheist level, right? They'll work with the average and even above average atheist. These guys aren't very sophisticated, uh, and they shit they say is just absolutely incoherent. Now, there probably are some more sophisticated, more nuanced views that atheists hold with regards to the things that I will talk about here: morality, free will, atheism itself. Um, but I haven't really encountered many of those people out there. Haven't felt motivated to really think about the things that they're saying, at least at this point in time, because some of these more sophisticated or maybe just slicker atheists, I'm probably not qualified to address those people, but the things that you'll hear here will work all the way up to, they'll work with 99% of atheists you run into out there, because it would seem atheists just say a whole bunch of dumb, irrational, incoherent shit, right? And I know people tend to get mad when I say these things, certain people, atheists themselves, but I mean, what am I saying that's not true, right? Don't get mad. Tell me how I'm wrong. So let's talk about the atheist worldview, right? The worldview that is atheism. And there's probably somebody listening to this right now cringing, wanting to type, atheism is not a worldview. Well, I'm talking about the worldview of atheism, right? I'm not talking about some things atheists claim to believe that's that has more to do with their mental state than what the world looks like, right? I'm talking about the worldview that is atheism, right? God doesn't exist. The negation of the claim that God exists. That's what I'm talking about. But if you want to tell me that that's not atheism, then I would say crack open a dictionary, right? But yeah, there is this this weaselly redefinition of atheism, which, as I already pointed out a while ago, is a concession in this debate that's been going on for the last, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of years. Definitely in the last few decades, right? Atheists have given ground. They can't defend the shit that they believe. So now they say, I merely disbelieve, right? Which is a lie. And for most of these people, it is a worldview, right? Because they actually don't believe God exists. God being, according to some people, right, the foundation of the universe, the world. It's a worldview to say he does or doesn't exist. So, this Weasley assertion that I merely lack belief, right? Or I just don't believe in the existence of any gods. I'm not saying God doesn't exist. Yeah, you are. You're just lying, right? I merely lack belief in any deity. All right, cool. What is I? Who's I, right? Are you a result of a whole bunch of random naturalistic processes, throw evolution, abiogenesis, and all that other shit in there? Or are you made in the image of God, right? I'm not saying there aren't other options, but I'm just saying these will cover what, 99% of people out there? Which is it, right? Well, clearly it's not made in the image of God. It's the opposite of that, right? A worldview that rejects the existence of God, right? Your atheistic worldview. You believe God doesn't exist. What's I? Tell me what I is. Ask them to tell you what I is. And from there, 99% of the time, you're going to be able to say, yeah, you don't believe God exists. I merely lack belief. All right, what's belief? What is faith? One of the dumbest things that these atheists say, some of them, a lot of them, most of them, is that, first of all, they'll reject the whole concept of faith insofar as their worldview, right? But it's not a worldview. They say we don't believe in anything, but it's not a worldview, right? We know. We don't believe. We know, right? Because science. Because faith is, was it Dawkins? Yeah, I think it was Dawkins who said this. He basically redefined what faith actually means. Whereas if you look in any dictionary, faith is holding something to be true without proof, right? And he changed proof to evidence. Dawkins did, which is just dishonest, right? These people are liars. That's not what faith means. It means believing in something which you cannot absolutely prove. We all have faith. We all believe something. Every single body out there believes something. But let me grant you that that's what faith is, right? And you don't have any. So, so how do you prove anything, right? If faith is that which doesn't require proof or something you hold to be true without proof, okay, well, what's proof? How do we get proof, right? And most of them will tell you science. That's the only way to prove anything, right? Which they're just dumb and uneducated, right? That's not true, actually. Science cannot prove anything. It can only provide evidence. The rest of them will lie to you and say that science can provide proof, knowing damn well that it can't, right? If you're so pro-science and into it and you know so much about it, how come you don't know this? That's embarrassing, right? But anyway, the only way they'll tell you in response that not only do they not believe in anything because they know, and the reason why they know is because they get proof, and the proof that they get comes from science. Right? Cool, 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 cool. So science is that which studies the natural world and the natural world only. It only makes statements about naturalistic phenomena, things, right? If that's the only way to know anything about the world, right? Well, you just rejected the supernatural. Not only are these people so incoherent, they'll ask you to prove the supernatural by using a tool that could only prove natural things, right? That's a fallacy. But they'll also tell you that that's the only way to know anything, right? Gee, well, did you use science to prove that science is the only way to prove things? No, you need philosophy, right? And you still can't justify that statement, right? It doesn't make any sense. So if the only way to know anything is through science or naturalistic means, right? You're rejecting the possibility. It's impossible on your worldview, right? Which is not a worldview. On your worldview, it's impossible to prove the supernatural doesn't exist, right? You just rejected God. You're lying. You believe God doesn't exist. I merely lack belief in gods, right? Deities. What's God? Can you define that for me, right? A lot of them will just straight out tell on themselves. They'll say it's a myth, it's a story you tell children, right? To make them behave. It's bullshit, they'll say, right? They'll literally tell you, almost literally, they believe God doesn't exist, right? Just ask them what God is. They'll just tell it right on themselves. They're just liars. They don't merely lack belief in God, they believe God doesn't exist. For somebody who supposedly lacks conviction, you see these people so convinced of everything. They sound very, very convinced and sure of themselves. But then they try to pretend like, well, we merely lack belief. That's all there is, right? Atheism is a worldview. Of course it is. It's the rejection of the supernatural. It's the rejection of God. That's what it is. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't like newborn babies. Let's just say I grant you they don't, it would seem, right? They don't possess the concept of God. Maybe they just don't know how to explain it. Right, but let's just grant you that. Maybe animals, right? Or newborns, toddlers. It's not something they've thought about, right? Considered. They don't have the ability to weigh the evidence pro and against this assertion that God exists. You could say in some sense they're atheist or they lack agnostic, really. That's what they would be. But they lack belief in any deity, right? Yeah, they don't they don't go out there talking about this stuff, arguing about it, right? Being so self-assured, cocky, rude, disrespectful, right? Calling people who believe in God dumb, right? Everything about these people, would you just start asking them some very basic questions, will lead you down 99% of the time will lead you down the path of atheism. Atheism is a worldview, right? Because it rejects God as the creator of the world. It's a worldview. Of course, it's a worldview. You're just dishonest. Stop lying. Another thing a lot of atheists reject is morality, right? They say it's subjective or there are no moral truths, right? They reject objective morality, which is morality in some way, shape, or form, right? However they get to it, they just say it doesn't exist, right? But then when you listen to them, they're always moralizing shit, right? They use moral language. They're always telling people what they should or shouldn't do. They're always telling you that this or that is wrong or it's correct, right? If you don't believe morality exists, why are you moralizing? Why are you using moral language? Why do you say one thing, but then it seems like you believe the opposite, right? You're incoherent. But they'll say that, it's just some, I don't know, we use this language because it's pragmatic, people understand it. We can have our desires met that way. Perhaps we could convince people to do the things that we want them to do, or some like explanation like that, or we just use it in order to be able to facilitate communication, right? It's like one example analogy that I heard was like saying that the sun rises right in the morning, when those of us who know, I guess, to them sun doesn't actually rise, right? Earth is orbiting around the sun, or whatever, you know what I mean, the actual scientific explanation is, right? We say, fully cognizant of what's actually happening, we still say the sun rises. Well, I mean, from where you're standing, that's what it looks like. It makes perfect sense to describe it as such. But even if I grant you that, you're just saying that to be able to communicate with most people, right? That's a mundane statement. There's no visceral reaction involved in that, like there is with, talking about, oh, let's just give a gruesome example, torturing newborns, right? That elicits a visceral reaction from you. Talking about the sun rising in the east, that's completely different. It's not analogous, right? You moralize because you have an internal moral compass. You know, wherever that comes from, however we explain it, right? You know that these things are wrong. You talk as if you believed, you feel, you act, you talk as if morality existed. It was objective. Okay? Stop lying. Stop lying. Then there's also, what do we got? We got atheism, morality, free will. I covered that in the previous video. Yeah, all these people that supposedly believe that free will doesn't exist get mad that when they make arguments, right? Other people don't agree with them. How do you not understand that free will doesn't exist? Well, because I was determined not to understand, dummy. If you believe free will doesn't exist, what the fuck are you doing expecting me to agree with you, right? Where do you get truth from? Like, we can't get to the truth. We can't know the truth because everything is determined. We don't have the ability to make choices between what's right and what's wrong, remember? They'll say, right, this is how they prove in many instances how free will doesn't exist. They'll say, let's do a thought exercise, right? Imagine for a moment that blah 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 blah, right? Wait a minute. But you want me to imagine, right? And the conclusion eventually, right, at the end of your whole long spiel, incoherent drivel, nonsense, babble, right? You're gonna tell me that I'm not in control of my thoughts. That's what it comes down to eventually, right? But you're telling me to imagine something. But the conclusion is gonna be, well, you're not in control of your thoughts. And what the fuck are you telling me to control my thoughts? And you don't make any sense. You're asking me to do the impossible according to you in order to prove that it's impossible. So the argument should be something like, imagine whatever the hell. See, you can't do it. Therefore, you have no free will. But if you do it, right, then they'll say, see, you did it because I told you. Just begging the question. How about this? How do you falsify a world with, if there is no free will, right? What does the world in which free will exists look like? How about that? Riddle me that. How would you know? You claim to. Explain it to me. Right? Everything they say, everything they do, the way they lead their lives, right, suggests that they believe they have free will, right? Because it's intuitive, as I said in my previous video. We all feel it, we all know it, we all understand it to be true. Those people themselves included. But they just lie to themselves. They say you can't make yourself believe anything, right? Even though they're all born making choices, believing that they are making choices. That's the initial belief. They rationalize, they start, doing science, or they listen to someone telling them that about someone supposedly doing some experiment that supposedly led them to believe something. And how the fuck were you led to believe anything? Using your own agency, making choices. How the fuck did that happen? Right? But they were born believing something. They lived their entire lives believing this, and they act on this belief. But then they rationalize, start investigating, and they change their belief while telling you that you don't have the free will to change your beliefs, right? And yet they still, their life is, one big cognitive dissonance because they tell you that free will doesn't exist, but they act as if it did. But, they had no choice, right? That's begging the question. And these are cognitively dissonant people, right? They they tell you they don't believe in free will, but they actually do. They're lying. They're just liars. They say you can't make yourself believe shit. They're liars. I think that's all I have to say. No, I guess we need some parting thoughts, summing all this shit up somehow, huh? Look, this is not an argument, right? This is just, I intuit this. These people, maybe they're generally atheists, but they're not always atheists. Um, but it's this atheist, materialist, physicalist, whatever the nuances may be, and there's no 100% agreement on everything all over the board, but it's materialism, right? It's the rejection of idealism, or it's this belief that matter over mind, right? See how incoherent this shit is? How, like, they flip shit upside down? Matter is primary to the mind, right? Really? That's that's not the quip, right? That's, you got this shit ass backwards. But they essentially, to some degree, to a large degree, reject the mind as primary, as very useful, right? As powerful. They denigrate the mind, reject, denigrate, poo poo the mind, right? And they try to use their mind to rationalize this shit. They reject logic, right? They reject the mind of God, logic, reason, and then they just babble, right? Now, again, I'm not saying this is an argument, but this is how I intuit it. It makes perfect sense to me. And just just the simple fact that they lie so much, right? If only to themselves, first and foremost to themselves. Yeah, these aren't good people, right? They're not good people. Probably why they reject morality too. Some of them anyway, most of them. It's all about, what is it? What is it all about? Well-being, right? Well-being, Kuman. That's what this shit's about. That's all I gotta say. It. One last thing. I implore all of you, all right, who believe this incoherent nonsense, even though it's impossible for you to make yourself believe this dumb shit. Anything, really. I implore you guys, reject this nonsense, or at the very least, make it make sense. Refine it, right? Don't just be like these guys, right? Make this shit make sense. I don't know how you can do that when you've rejected the mind. I don't know how, but hey, try. And if you can't, be honest, stop lying, and reject this bullshit. Thanks for watching.